In 2015, Andrew Schuldice made a hard decision. He could have either continued working for Silverback Productions, or quit and become a full-time indie dev. Schuldice chose the latter. This decision was not made in confidence, nor for one solitary reason, but he felt the need to leave. He felt the need to go and try. This marked the beginning of what would eventually become Tunic. Development was free-form and slow. Schuldice didn't even know what he wanted to make at the time, just that his creation should have secrets, that it should feel like an adventure. Being a programmer for two-dimensional games, the full-stack development of 3D video games took a while for Schuldice to learn. He started slowly, making rudimentary, low-poly models. One wound up becoming the game's fox, others standard enemies or weapon effects. He ironed out how exactly he wanted to lay out the world, how to entice prospective players to actually explore it. With inspirations like Zelda and Dark Souls in mind, he ironed out the combat feel through brute force. And for 7 long years, Schuldice toiled away to truly achieve his vision. But he didn't go at it entirely alone. Early on, Schuldice connected with Terrence Lee and Janice Kwan to work on the soundtrack. After being wowed by early demos at the 2015 Games Developers Conference, Kevin Ragami was enticed to become the lead sound designer. 2 years later, the game gained a producer with Felix Kramer and a publisher with Finji, and the core team was finalized in 2020 when Eric Billingsley was brought on as level designer. The game was first shown to the wider public during Microsoft's 2018 E3 presentation, and was then shown off at numerous other Penny Arcade Expos, E3s, even the Game Awards. The level designer Billingsley was even using Tunic as inspiration for his own personal project before joining the team proper. But as the game gained traction and anticipation, the team continued to slowly chug away at the game. Over the course of development, visuals would go on to be refined, the lighting was reworked, the character models were mostly replaced and updated with counterparts, but some, such as the slimes, managed to remain in the final product. The levels themselves were completely reworked over and over again. Schuldice and Billingsley worked hard on making sure every corner had a rewarding secret. As such, entire areas were ripped from the final product to improve the game flow. The combat went through innumerable iterations, and the camera angle was shifted during combat to make encounters easier to analyze. Through the over 6 years of development, the team worked closely together to make Tunic exciting to explore, beautiful to look at, fun to play, and have wonderful sounds and songs to accompany the adventure. The release date was announced before the 2021 The Game Awards, which is also when Tunic entered my radar. Published by Finji, Tunic released for Xbox and PC in March of 2022, and for Switch and Sony consoles in September that same year. Being a big Platinum Trophy fan, I opted to wait for the PS5 release. After seeing the game's trailers and hearing its praises, I was incredibly excited. So much so that I fully completed the game over the course of 3 days. Before playing Tunic, I'd only gotten around to playing 2 2D Zelda games. The 3DS's A Link Between Worlds, a game I truly love, and the Switch's remake of Link's Awakening, which I enjoyed immensely. Despite never going back to play any other Zelda classics, I did fall in love with the formula. Some of my most favorite games of recent years have worked within the model. Chicory or Death's Door have fun twists on combat and exploration. Binding of Isaac is an excellent dungeon crawler of the like. So while my experience with the originator is lacking, the way Tunic implemented and modified the formula was sure to be a hit. Tunic opens with a fox waking up on a sandy shore. At this point, the player can explore a very limited space, and most will find the first weapon, a stick, which allows the fox to fight enemies and break open pots. After walking past a fox goddess shrine, the player fox will arrive at a large door. By interacting with it, they're whisked away to some spirit-type zone and find what appears to be that same goddess trapped in a geometrically pleasing containment field. The fox wakes back up in the physical realm and begins their journey. The game plays as one might expect. The fox can swing their weapon in the direction they're facing, put up their shields to block incoming attacks, or dodge roll to avoid them. Both blocking and dodging pull from the fox's stamina meter, which if fully depleted will take much longer to recharge. Only 3 items can be equipped at a time. There are the obvious ones like the stick or sword, but various others like the fox head, the candle pot, or the coin have less obvious usages. Throughout the land are various enemies that usually attacks the fox on sight. Normally the game presents the world at an isometric angle, giving a good view of the fox and their surroundings, but when an enemy is targeted, the camera shifts ever so slightly to give a better view of the action. Defeating them rewards the fox with some number of golden prisms that are used as currency. Upon death, a fox will lose a whole bunch of currency and respawn at the most recently touched goddess statue. They also leave a translucent blue ghost floating where they perished. If the fox can trek back and touch their ghost, they'll reclaim any lost money, as well as push away and stun any nearby enemies. From a story perspective, very little is told to the player. There is some signage around the world, but much of it is written in a strange language. While one door might be inscrutable, the next proudly displays "Sealed Forever." Early on, the game picks and chooses what to tell the player as to lead them somewhere interesting, while still incentivizing exploration. There's not even any dialogue. Most that is communicated is through actions or through clever level design. The goddess hammers away at her cage. The fox opens the spirit facsimile of the sealed door by ringing 2 bells. The spider clan sneaks up and surrounds their prey. There is no concrete messaging. Everything is left for the player to interpret. That is, except for what's written in the manual. Where the narrative structure of the game winds up being straightforward, the backstory of the world is fairly intricate, and told through Tunic's key collectible, the game manual. As the little fox explores, they are able to find pages from the manual scattered about. These pages are truly fantastic. Each is filled with incredible detail and many have beautiful illustrations. And as more pages are found, more of the story gets flushed out. It explains more about how the fox arrived on the island, more about how the goddess was trapped, and why all the enemies are about, with one big asterisk. Most of the writing is also in this strange language, leaving the player to largely interpret it through context clues and the included art. The bulk of the manual pages are actually a manual for the game Tunic. Once found, some of the pages illuminate how to do simple things like attack, dodge roll, or utilize various structures throughout the world. Others actually explain what the items do, assuming the player can reason out their usages from the few English words along with the illustrations. Some of my favorites were the lovingly rendered maps, some of which even give hints on where treasures might be hidden. But even the ones that are just illustrated scenes with some lore snippets were always a joy to look at. On the surface, that is what Tunic is. The little fox explores the world, finds secrets, and defeats enemies. Along the way, they collect new weapons and discover more about the world. But Tunic is so much more than a simple Zelda-inspired adventure game. Tunic really becomes special with how it handles secrets. There are fun things to discover around every corner, behind every waterfall, hidden in every page. I had so much fun finding them all. Before playing, I knew that the game incentivized exploration, so from the offset, I beat my head against every tree, around every corner, attempting to seek out as much as the game held. And even doing this, I missed quite a bit. Really, there are secrets everywhere. There are chests just behind trees, paths hidden around corners, doors cleverly hidden behind the level geometry. And a really fun point I realized early on, if I shifted the camera by using the lock-on feature, sometimes I'd be able to see a hidden object. This combination of running into every corner, shifting the camera to find my way through, and paying close attention to the level geometry was the true highlight of my experience. Even then, if you're not facing, say, a ladder in just the right way, it's still incredibly easy to miss. This opened up some really fun epiphanies after finishing a dungeon, climbing up a ladder, and finding myself emerging from behind a cliff back at the start of it. And the secrets are not limited to the overworld. The game manual, which I cannot speak highly enough of, goes multiple steps deeper. Earlier on, I found pages that explained key gameplay concepts. I could have done these moves from the very start had I only known the correct button combination. Later, I started noticing scribbles in the margins or on the maps. These wind up being hints for even more puzzles found throughout the game. There are the more obvious ones like treasure chest locations, along with some truly esoteric late-game puzzles. I also really appreciated the rate at which puzzles increased in complexity. Early on, it's as simple as trekking down the hinted at bells. Later on, it might be something that's told through the manual. In the late game, it might be a puzzle that must be interpreted from a very late game manual page, potentially needing to translate some of the constructed language, maybe listening for vague audio clues. And there are numerous late game puzzles, and all of them feel so good to figure out. I found one puzzle within the first 20 minutes of playing, but didn't solve it until the very end. And the final puzzle in the game, well, the final excluding the ARG stuff, is such a fantastic culmination of everything I loved. It was euphoric when I solved it. That's not to say all the puzzles are perfect. A couple of the later puzzles, and especially the trophy room and ARG puzzles, I wound up looking up. A lot of them required translating the constructed language, and that just wasn't something I wanted to do. And some were hinted at so vaguely that I just couldn't figure them out on my own. One puzzle in specific I found a bit annoying, in that I thought it was more complex than it actually was. And while I still think that puzzle was cool, I'm annoyed that my solution was only wrong because I thought too hard about it. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, ask me privately and I'll spoil it for you. While the combat works as intended, I found it was mostly just serviceable. All the weapons feel fine, the dodge roll is good enough, and the stamina depletion is balanced fairly well. With the exception of one late-game combat arena which had me ripping my hair out in frustration, every other encounter felt justifiable. There were some pretty difficult bosses, but none felt cheap. Average encounters could become overwhelming, but if I properly managed my stamina gauge, brought enough healing items, and wasn't afraid of using some of the other items, I'd always make it out okay. Speaking of, I don't want to spoil what any of them actually do, but not being afraid to use expendable items makes the game much better. There was an especially tough boss about halfway through that, while I got through it with the normal weapons, it would have gone much smoother had I taken my own advice and used some of the other items too. That being said, Tunic comes with a plethora of accessibility features in the options. These features don't mess with completion or achievements, so if anything ever gets more annoying than fun, I wholeheartedly recommend turning some on. In hindsight, I absolutely should have turned off damage for the hair pulling section I mentioned earlier. My favorite part of Tunic is exploring and finding secrets, so if the combat becomes frustrating, then turn off the damage. The core of the game is still great without it. I bet that Tunic would be pretty fun to play regardless of how it looked, but the art style the team chose really works. Everything still is mostly simplistic and polygonal, harkening back to how Shouldice started the project, but so much was layered on top to make it a visual feast. The lighting engine is wonderful. The textures and all the models work together incredibly well to make the game vibrant, while making sure the cliffs and edges are still obvious. The box is also just super cute. Additionally, the music makes the entire game pleasant. Every world has a new and calming track that never gets old, and as the fox moves from area to area, it seamlessly shifts to the next track. I really enjoyed playing through Tunic. While I was never fully invested in the combat, finding how many different types of secrets were hidden throughout the game was a true joy. Overall, I give Tunic a playable fox character key art drawn by AuraHack out of 10. I mean, just look at them. They look so happy. Thank you so much for watching. First, let me cite my sources that I used for this. I'd like to thank Jill Grote's Game Informer article tracing threads the making of Tunic, and NoClip's developer breakdown for Tunic. Both were indispensable for the history section of the video. Links to both in the description. Also, thanks to Moby Games for a quick resource on the credits of the game. This was my first review in a post-Super Mario in Review world, but at least Tunic is tangentially related to Mario? Kinda? If you go through Zelda, speaking of Zelda, new one's out. Very excited for it. Anyway, let me know some other really fun Zelda likes I might have missed. I reviewed Chicory and Death's Door last year, so check those videos, links in the description, and I'm also really excited for Yacht Club Games' follow-up to Shovel Knight, Mina the Hallower, but I'm sure there's still plenty of others that I've missed as well. Since it's on Switch now, I should probably try out Minish Cap. I think I've got the Oracle games on my 3DS, so any other than those, I guess. So if you enjoyed this video, please let me know, and maybe leave a ranking if you'd like. Also, if you want to keep track of anything else I'm doing, you can find my social medias in the description where I'm at Mario8th everywhere. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.